Alrighty, hello and welcome to That WNBA podcast, the podcast where I dive deep into the world of the WNBA. Join me as I celebrate the incredible athletes, thrilling games, and inspiring stories from around the league, and the stories that made women's basketball so special. Whether you're a long-time fan or a new viewer, I've got you covered with game analysis, interviews, and all the latest news from around the league. Here to be inspired and entertained. Let's tip off. So, welcome to episode 3 of That WNBA podcast. I'm your host, Jan From, and we're back again for another episode of this new podcast. Coming to you every Wednesday here from Australia with your host, Jan From. I am really excited for today's episode. It's been a week. We've got lots to talk about. And I'm really excited to get started. Just remember before we do that you can listen to this podcast on all your podcasting platforms or wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave it a like, a comment, maybe subscribe, and do whatever you can to help me get up in that algorithm. So hopefully more people can enjoy our community and what I have to say about the WNBA. So with no further ado, let's get started. Today, we've got a range of topics to discuss from the last week of action, including more talk about Caitlin Clark, of course, her ESPYs, her history-making moments in the last week, as there have been many this season, her jersey sales and jersey sales in general. I also want to talk about Diana Taurasi, the kind of weekly roundup of WNBA games and news, and also a little bit about the upcoming Olympics, which start next week, which are very exciting as well for women's basketball and the basketball world in general. So, first of all, Caitlin Clark. I'm going to sound like a broken record. I'm sure everybody around the league at the moment sounds like a broken record. When we talk about Caitlin Clark, who has quickly become really the face of the league, the face of women's basketball. And as much as you can try and deny that, and you can point to other incredible NBA players, which I will happily do, and which I hopefully will do across this podcast, as long as we go for, and as long as I can hopefully make this work. But there's no doubt that Caitlin Clark is attracting more eyes to the sport than ever before. As much as I love Sabrina and, of course, Satu and whoever else from the Dallas Wings, especially my home team, I would say, Caitlin Clark is just on a whole nother level. So I want to start there, actually, and I'm just going to grab some notes I've got here because a few really incredible things have happened over the last week since our last episode. Now, first of all, the first thing I want to point to is obviously Caitlin Clark's ESPYs, okay? So she won record-breaking performance, and she's the first woman to win that award. It's incredible to me, and I think she commented on this, that somebody like Serena Williams never won that award. But again, you can see the kind of attention she's bringing to women's basketball, and the ESPY awards are just part of that. She also won Best College Athlete in the women's category, and look, it's really incredible. But these record-breaking performances, which she won that award for, just seem to be happening every day. So here are a few, and you can follow me on Twitter at WNBA Podcast and all other social media networks. But here are just a few stats that have come up for me over the last week that I found really incredible, really exciting, and something that I need to highlight. First of all, she became the first player in WNBA history with at least 15 points and 13 assists in 3 straight games. So she had a 19-point, 13-assist game, a 29-point, 13-assist game, and a 20-point, 13-assist game. It's just, look, there are obviously better players at the moment in the WNBA She's still a rookie. Let's not look past that. She is not the best player in women's basketball at this point in time. I think she will be definitely in a year or two. It might take a little bit longer depending on her WNBA body and how she keeps developing. But we know as a scorer, as a three-point shooter, as a person that loves to dish out assists, she's just fantastic. And I think her turnover history, which we have to talk about as well, we can't just only look at the positives. She has got the most amount of turnovers in WNBA history. But we know that maybe the Indiana Fever aren't quite the same team as perhaps the Aces or the Liberty. And if she was playing on one of those teams with someone like Sabrina or people to catch those passes that are maybe of a slightly higher quality, and the Indiana Fever are really young, they're improving. I don't want to take anything away from them. But if she had high quality players around her, a lot of those turnovers would be a lot different. I'm sure lots of you have seen those kind of, let's call them low light packages. But a lot of her turnovers really aren't her fault, let's say. Anyway, we'll start there. Now, she does have the most amount of doubles by rookie in WNBA history. I know that Angel Reese went on that double streak, which was broken. That's a whole nother story. I don't think we're going to have too much time to talk about that. I think the ending to that game was a little bit shameless on her part, also on the part of the Liberty, who were defending against her from getting that double at the end of the game. It was kind of hard to watch, but personally, I'm not somebody for stat padding. Just leave it a rebound short. It's history. I understand that, but if you're doing that at the end of the game to get an extra couple of points or an extra rebound, it's not helping your team. It's not impactful on winning. It's just there as a statistic, and at that point, I don't think it has the same amount of value. Moving on from that, obviously, Caitlin played the Minnesota Lynx. One that was a really great game to watch. It was absolutely fantastic. I would recommend you go back and watch that. Watch that game. It was really close for most of it. Caitlin didn't have a best game, but she was pumping up the Minnesota crowd at the end, which was mainly made up of, I would say close to half an Iowa or an Indiana Fever crowd, and kind of getting a bit of payback against the coach of the Minnesota Lynx, who was also the coach for the U.S. Olympic team, in Cheryl Reeve. And yeah, I think that kind of speaks for itself. Now, in terms of turnovers, we know that's a problem, but Caitlin Clark is also leading the whole of the WNBA in assists. Okay, last time I looked, it was at 194 dimes. Alyssa Thomas from the Sun is second, down to fifth with Sabrina at 148. So really, I think Caitlin Clark's going to be your assist leader for the year. I don't think it's going to be too close, and I think that's incredible for a rookie. I know Dan Patrick pointed out, like I did last week, that Caitlin Clark should be a rookie of the year. I still don't think it's close. I don't think Dan Patrick thinks it's very close, and I have to agree with him. And I hope they go the right way on that decision. But I want to finish. We're almost at the end of this segment. I don't want to talk about Caitlin Clark any more than that. She's going to dominate a lot of my segments, a lot of podcasts through the nation. And I think 10 minutes is just about enough of that. But I want to look at something to do with jersey sales, not just particularly Caitlin, but also just jersey sales in the WNBA in total, and kind of how underprepared Nike and maybe the WNBA was. It's great that the league is growing. It's great that it's getting this attention, but to keep that attention, to keep that that revenue flowing, and to really capitalize on it, you need to have plans in place, and you need to be able to supply products. I think something for women's sport, and I think you can disagree with me on this, but obviously women need to be watching women's sport. Okay, that's important. It's important that women empower other women. And I know that that's really started the popularity of some of the leagues around the world. I also think, though, that when it comes to certain leagues, that there's kind of been a theme of maybe, men are only watching this for perhaps attract the fact that there are attractive women in some of these sporting leagues. They're only watching now because it's getting more popular. We don't want those men here. We want to cater to women. We want to empower women. But to me, I think that's the wrong attitude to take, because I think men are the biggest consumer of sports and all types of sport. And if you want the WNBA to grow to the level of the NBA, or just grow in general, I know the NBA is a long way away, to see that sort of growth. But if you want the league to grow, you need men to be able to be interested, to be able to grow the sport, to tell other men about the positives, the fantastic aspects of women's sport, the fact that they enjoy it. And I think you need men involved. And I think something that's happened in the past, here in Australia, we have the Matildas. Okay, they're sponsored by Nike in women's soccer. They're a fantastic team. They just came fourth at the home World Cup here last year. And I think Australia capitalized on that. It was the biggest World Cup in terms of ticket sales, etc., for a long time. And the Matildas jersey sold more than our Australian men's soccer jerseys did at the last men's World Cup. And I think that's a testament to the Matildas. They've sold out their last, maybe rough here, 15 home games in Australia. That's ranging anywhere from stadiums here with a capacity of 20 to 30,000 all the way to Optus Stadium here in Perth, or in Melbourne and Sydney during the World Cup, where they were selling out stadiums in the range of 70 to 90,000. And the whole kind of country's gone behind them. And Nike made a lot of money from those jersey sales. I think they were prepared to an extent. They did eventually run out of jerseys. They've kind of are restocking them now. I'm sure there will be a change of jerseys soon anyway. But they were kind of prepared enough. They knew it was going to garner a lot of interest in the home country, especially during the World Cup. And they did the correct thing, I think. Adidas, on the other hand, my other home country in Germany, you couldn't get German women's home jerseys or away jerseys, any jersey sold by Adidas in men's sizing. That's a decision Adidas already made at the World Cup before for the women, and they said they just didn't see that there was enough profit to be made. And I think for them to make that decision coming into the last World Cup was just kind of pathetic. And like I said, I think you need men to get on board, and a large part of supporting any sports team is having merchandise, being able to relate, wearing jerseys, being able to put your passion out there. And if I can't, I was actually kind of really disappointed. It's a beautiful jersey. If you can't go out and buy that jersey in men's sizing, I think you're going to lose a lot of men that would otherwise support those teams. This is not quite the same when it comes to the WNBA at the moment. We have unisex jerseys. My Caitlin Clark away Red Fever jersey is pre-ordered, hopefully on its way about halfway through August, ready in time for my birthday, hopefully. And I'm really excited. I think we could get extra or higher sizing in that for maybe men that are a little bit bigger, but that's not a problem for me as such. And you just size up if you normally wear men's jerseys, an extra size. But Fever jerseys in particular, anything with Caitlin Clark, sold out extremely quickly within hours of the draft. All-Star jerseys have just sold out on the Fever website within hours. You still can get them on the WNBA shop, I believe. So go and pick up your Indiana or your WNBA Caitlin Clark jersey, or whoever of your favorite players is playing in the All-Star game. I love Sabrina. Those jerseys are also sold out everywhere here in Australia at the moment. And I wish we would get them back because it costs a lot for shipping from the States when you include conversion. But here's something I just want to read out, and it relates to this, is that the women's sports apparel market has soared to $4 billion in the US, but retailers are unable to keep up with demand. And that's what I mean. I think we need to prepare, we need to stock, and we need to produce more jerseys, more apparel for not just the WNBA, but women's sports in general. If they aren't all sold, I know that's maybe not the best business model for these companies, but you need to aim high. And I think they will sell eventually, but you need to have the stock, because if people can't buy those jerseys, I think, look, I haven't done the research on this, I'm a scientist, but not in that field. I don't think that people are going to be as enthusiastic to go back and to come back and try and pre-order that jersey or come back and try and get another one. I think you need to be ready in advance. And I think that without adequate production, licensing rights, distribution abilities, the fans can't get the merch they're asking for. And that's an article posted on X or Twitter by Front Office Sports. That's what I'm quoting there. And I really, really encourage you to check that out, because I think it's really interesting. And I think we need to do more to get the WNBA out there in terms of merchandise, because I think that's really important revenue stream, I imagine, and just a really important stream when it comes to fan support and to fan retainment, and to getting that part of the WNBA out there. So hopefully I'll be rocking my Caitlin Clark jersey soon. I'm hoping to get some Sabrina jerseys. I've already got 2 pairs of the Sabrina 1s. I'm waiting here for the Sabrina 2s to come and some other retailers, because Nike sold out within hours. So yeah, I'm really, really excited, and I'm going to be repping the WNBA and some amazing players that I enjoy watching shortly. So moving on, this has taken quite a while, so this episode might go over half an hour, but I want to move on to Diana Taurasi now. And I want to move on to her when it comes to her apparent injury that we've seen recently. She did play yesterday, so that's a good sign, depending on what your views here are. But I wanted to discuss it because it came out earlier in the week that maybe she would miss the Olympics. Now, I don't know how severe that injury was. I don't know if there's a risk of maybe re-aggravation. But the talk was that maybe if she couldn't get up for the Olympics, there would be a free roster spot, and maybe it would be an opportunity for the US Olympic Committee to correct their wrong and put Caitlin Clark on the roster. It looks now like Diana hopefully will be able to play. I think that's a good thing. I think she deserves that, even if I think that maybe this year in terms of production, Caitlin is probably the better player. And no, in terms of legacy, maybe people wouldn't want to hear that, and that's why Diana is on the team and Caitlin is not yet. Caitlin will get a shot. I'm not one of those people that thinks it's an absolute disgrace that she's not on the team. I think US basketball missed an opportunity by not putting her on the team, because I think she could have made up the last roster spot. I think that wasn't going to take away from too many players on the team. I think it's pretty close between her and maybe the last roster spot on that team, or between her and Diana. And I think that it would have put, again, women's basketball out there in the limelight. And I know apparently they were worried that Caitlin Clark fans would be disappointed with her not getting that much game time. I think she would have showed enough. I think the experience for a player like that to go through and learn from some of the best, to maybe get a bit more support and some somebody to learn off, when really some of the WNBA players were a bit hard on her to begin with and maybe didn't welcome her as much as they should have. Look, I have my own opinions on that, but I think that was maybe too long ago to rehash now. I think they're opening up to her more, but I think it was perhaps a missed opportunity to give her that guidance, that experience to make a team stronger in the future. We know she will headline that team in probably already in 4 years' time at the next Olympics. There is an Olympic Games coming up in I believe it's 2032 in Brisbane here in Australia. I would love to go and watch the basketball there and watch some of my favorite players, but that's something to think about in the future. It's still a long time away. But man, I love that opportunity. And I think she'll be there. And I think that, we know she will be there in the future. I think it's just maybe a bit of a missed opportunity when it comes to for her to learn from the other players that have been there for a long time, for her to learn about the US Olympic basketball situation, what it's like to go. I know we all think that they're going to win that pretty handily. I have some thoughts on that at the end of the podcast, but I think it would have just been a good opportunity for her. And I'll leave it at that because we are carrying on a little bit here. Now, next up, I want to talk about the weekly roundup of games from the WNBA. We might go through some statistics, through some thoughts. I've got some FanDuel odds in terms of upcoming games and also the Olympics at the end that I want to talk about a little bit. That's not because I'm a betting man. It's not because they're a sponsor or because I'm advertising gambling in that sense, but it just gives you kind of a good idea on who the favorites are for each game and maybe what you should be looking out for. So something I really recommend if you are into the WNBA, I really have to put that out here too, is buy WNBA League Pass. In Australia, it'll cost you 52 Australian dollars a year at the moment. I think that's 39 US dollars roughly annually. It's nothing. I pay 25 Australian dollars a month to watch just the Mavs on NBA League Pass. It's nothing. It will go higher as the demand grows. Don't be put off by that, but you need to support it. I know it sounds like a bit of a contradiction that your price will go higher when we've got a bit of a cost of living crisis, especially here in Australia. But you need to support the WNBA, and buying League Pass is one way to do that. You'll be able to enjoy all the games. There might be some restrictions in certain countries, but all the games, as far as I know, you'll be able to watch your favorite players. You can replay them when you come home from work. You can watch them live in the middle of the night here if you're in Australia, or early in the morning. You can watch highlight packages. It's really up to you. I really recommend you go ahead and do that. In terms of roundup of WNBA games, I want to talk about yesterday specifically, today here in Australia, Wednesday, and just talk about some of the games and some of the highlights, the final scores. I might not go completely through the last week, but I'll pick out some games that I enjoyed, some games that you might want to go back and rewatch, or that were just news or highlight worthy throughout the week. So today we had Chicago beat the EPSYS, which is something that probably most people wouldn't have expected. I've got here that Chicago are still 9-14. I think that would have changed today. I think that would be 10-14 now. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe that is already updated. But as I said in last week's podcast, I don't think that Chicago will be high in the standings in Indiana, and I think that's going to give the edge to Caitlin in that Rookie of the Year race as well. It is close, but Indiana now have won a few games in a row. I think they're 4-0 in their away jersey. They've won 6 out of their last, I want to say 9, and they're now 11-14. So they're almost at 500, and they've got that 7th spot just above the Chicago Sky. I think they're definitely going to make the playoffs with about 15 games to go, because Atlanta are about 3 games back at the moment. So I think it's pretty safe to pencil the Indiana Fever in a playoff spot here. Surprised that they beat the EPSYS. I was definitely surprised there. If you're looking at the box score, of course, Asia Wilson, still incredible player. She's going to win the WNBA MVP. She had 28 points in that game. Angel was okay. She had 13 and 10, another double-double. As we know, I don't know how much I kind of play into that whole thing, but definitely worth the conversation. The Liberty actually beat the Sun quite comfortably to extend their lead at the top of the standings. My girl Sabrina, God, what a game and what a season really as well for her. So she had 30 points today. She did have 7 turnovers. We'll try and forget about that. But she had 30, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Just look, incredible player, incredible shooter. I love watching Sabrina play. Really good game from her, I have to say. We also had Seattle beat LA, which was quite interesting. I'm seeing a lot of videos of Cameron Brink. Not even, I think I've mentioned this before, not even in a brace or anything, which to me is really surprising. Looks like she's doing well. Obviously, she's out for the season, but yeah, really happy that she's looking pretty healthy at the moment. And then throughout the rest of the week, I mentioned that Indiana-Minnesota game. Really recommend you go and watch that. Indiana winning by 7, really entertaining. Las Vegas also quite comfortably beat the Mystics on that same day on Monday here in Australian time. We also had my Dallas Wings unfortunately losing to LA. It looks like Satu is going to be back for the Olympics and then hopefully back in the WNBA after the Olympic break. Something I'm really looking forward to. And also we've got, of course, Indiana playing the Wings this week before heading into the All-Star game, which is something I should mention as well before the podcast ends. WNBA All-Star game on here Sunday morning Australian time. I think it's going to be quite early here in WA. I'm really looking forward to watching it. I can't wait. I really recommend you give it a watch, and it's going to be fantastic. Can't wait for All-Star weekend, and then we're moving into the Olympics next week, which is what I want to move on from here. I think that's a good enough little kind of weekly roundup of some of the important games, especially over the last few days. Obviously, this is a weekly podcast. I'm not going to go over every game. I think that's a bit much. That would take us forever. Hopefully, a lot of you have seen the results. I hope if you're interested in this podcast that, hopefully maybe you've watched some of the games. And yeah, I won't kind of carry on with that too much. And we'll wrap it up shortly with a little bit of Olympic coverage here. So in terms of Olympic coverage, I wanted to talk about this mainly because A, it starts next week, which is really exciting, and B, because I think there's this kind of narrative that the US is going to cruise home as the men have done in the past, again here at these Olympics. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. I don't think that the rest of the world have caught up as much with the women as they have in the men's side of things. I think the US has really lost their grip on the NBA side of the FIBA and the international game. I think the women are a lot more still well suited, a lot more dominant in that category. I know they have won gold forever. I don't know if that's going to change these Olympics, but I wanted to have a look at these odds here, and specifically the gold medal winner. As you can imagine, the US minus 1800 on FanDuel at the moment. The next closest France, Belgium, Japan, China, Australia, Spain, Canada, all at plus 2900. What that means, I'm definitely not a betting man, but I think from what I know, that means that if you bet $100, you're going to get $2,900 back. If you bet 100 on the women, you are going to lose 1,800. So my advice is don't bet on the US women to win the Olympics or the gold medal. But I think what I really would go with here, I think, are the Australian women. I think the Australian women have a great chance of being up there and giving the US some problems. I think they have good size. They have great basketball heritage, which does count. Australia is always very ferocious, very hardworking, kind of a working class mentality. They're going to get down and dirty and they're going to make life tough on the opposition. I think Germany at plus 9,500 are a bit of an outside chance, a bit of an underdog, and maybe the dark horse. That's who I would go with. And I think this is not just because I live in Australia, I'm Australian and German, but I think Satu coming back for the German team probably will bump those odds up a little bit. Along with her sister, of course, I think those two with their size might give the USA some problems on the inside. Maybe the shooting won't quite be there and the offense generation on the Germany side of things. And Sabrina's obviously going to be hitting a ton of threes for the States. But I think those are a couple of good options if you're looking to have a look at that and if you're interested in the Olympics. And I really think that it's a good idea to kind of have a look and enjoy the Olympic game. It's a little bit different to the WNBA and the NBA when it comes to the men. Also very interesting, some slightly different rules. I think if you haven't watched women's basketball before, the Olympics is definitely an easy way to get into that, because I think in the Olympics, most people also look at it a little bit differently and aren't so focused on the difference between the genders when it comes to competitive sport. So I think if you want to warm up with women's basketball, the Olympics is a good place to start. I really encourage you to watch the US specifically if you want to see what potential the WNBA has, because obviously the majority of the high-level players in the WNBA are going to be from the US. So I encourage you to watch that, have a look, see what happens. In terms of other odds and upcoming games for the WNBA, we have the Indiana Fever playing my Dallas Wings. I believe Indiana are slight favorites at 4 under. I think that Dallas could maybe pinch that game, but I think Indiana should win, consolidate their spot at 7th in the standings there. And then you have Minnesota and Atlanta. I think it's pretty safe to say Minnesota should definitely win that game, but they do have a couple of injuries, so watch out for that. Now, I've talked a lot. We're at the 33-minute mark. I think that almost does it for the podcast. I'm going to go through a couple of other bits of news quickly before I let you go. But just remember to keep following me. You can find me on all your podcasting apps and platforms. And please give it a like, give it a comment, and subscribe and support the podcast so I can keep doing this. So I'm motivated to hopefully not talk to a blank screen. Hopefully we can build a community, some interest around this, and I will get less blurry if that's putting you off. I will try to say and less as I go on, as I get more of an idea of what the structure of this will be. But essentially, 10-minute segments, 3 segments at least, maybe not of equal length, depending on the importance. As you saw today, Caitlin Clark took up, and surrounding that topic took up maybe a little bit more time. But I really enjoy this. I really like talking about it to somebody, even if it's just a screen in this case. But if I can talk to you in the comment sections, if I can discuss women's basketball, women's sport in general, if you have any other women's sports questions, I'll be happy to go into that as well. I can start other podcasts. I can talk about other women's sports, other sports in general. I'm a big sporting fan. I think I have some good opinions. I think I know what I'm talking about when it comes to these sports. And I'd really like to keep doing this. So support the channel, support the podcast, and it's starting to rain now, so hopefully you can still hear me. I just want to wrap up with a couple of things. Firstly, we've talked about the All-Star game this Sunday. We are going to have Pitbull as a headliner at the halftime show. I think that's going to be quite interesting. I'm a bit of a Pitbull fan, so hopefully that'll be quite fun. Fun little vibe to the All-Star game. Sue Bird is also going to become the first WNBA player to have a Barbie doll made for her or made on her likeness. We talked last week that Aja is going to be the first person on the NBA 2K cover. So these things are really exciting. It's really pushing the sport forward, and it's not just Caitlin Clark, it's all those other players as well, even though Caitlin Clark is bringing most of the eyes at the moment. And yeah, I think I will wrap it up there. So look, keep supporting the channel, keep supporting the podcast. And yeah, thank you really again for joining in to that WNBA podcast today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and that you feel even more connected to the world of the WNBA and its players and these fantastic athletes. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Leave us a review, maybe a 5-star review on some of your podcast platforms. Follow me on social media at that WNBA podcast on Twitter, X, Instagram. And yeah, hopefully join in the conversation with me and fellow fans. And yeah, to wrap that up, until next